There is exactly one rule for surviving the timberlands, known as Blackwood Forest. If you hear someone calling your name after sunset, do not answer. In October 2025, 5 hikers from Seattle decided to test that rule. They were well equipped for a weekend trip, bringing a drone, a 4K camera, and cell phones loaded with digital GPS routing. They entered the trees shortly before noon. Within minutes, their technological armor failed. Every phone lost service. The GPS maps froze, and their digital compasses began spinning in continuous circles. The forest is deploying a calculated tactic of sensory deprivation. By mid-afternoon, the ambient wildlife sounds in Blackwood vanish completely, and the physical trail behind the hikers disappears. The environment snaps shut into a closed loop. This shifting geography operates as a vacuum. It cuts prey off from the logical world, removing any reliable reference point. Up, down, north, and south cease to exist. In an environment that actively manipulates spatial reality to trap its prey, modern technology becomes an outright liability. The hikers were blind, isolated, and exactly where the forest wanted them. Once the sun drops, the entity initiates its first active attack. But it doesn't approach with a roar. Instead, it projects individualized whispers simultaneously. Sarah heard her deceased father. Marcus heard his wife. Jake heard his own echoing voice. This mechanism is a psychological anglerfish. The monster doesn't create the bait. It mines the specific traumatic memories of its victims to formulate the perfect lure. It then pulls the cluster apart by pulling on those exact emotional strings. The goal is to force human prey to willingly abandon the safety of the group. Under enough highly tailored emotional pressure, a person will step off the trail and walk into the dark completely alone. Recognizing the tactic, Sarah implemented an immediate physical countermeasure. She took a climbing rope and physically tied all 5 of their backpacks together, ensuring that if someone tried to follow a whisper, the rest of the group would anchor them in place. The creature's most dangerous weapon is not its physical strength. It is the calculated weaponization of human grief to manufacture vulnerability. Late that evening, the tethered group stumbled upon an anomaly in the deep American wilderness, an ancient moss-covered stone shrine, carefully maintained with fresh flowers and small clay lamps. This photograph shows the specific deity depicted at the shrine, a fierce, multi-armed Hindu goddess standing over a reclined figure. Built by immigrant railroad workers a century earlier, the shrine operated as an analog containment system, keeping the entity dormant through strict adherence to tradition. But the containment system only works if the site remains undisturbed. Marcus dismissed the shrine as a tourist trap. Out of cynical disbelief, he reached out, striking a ceremonial bell hanging from a branch. The environmental escalation was immediate. The small flames in the clay lamps turned blue. Thousands of unseen bells began ringing from the deep timber. The psychological taunting instantly morphed into an active physical hunt. Ignoring the generational warnings converted a dormant supernatural boundary into an active, aggressive hunt. By striking the bell, Marcus broke the only mechanism keeping the group safe. Running blindly, the group found refuge in an illuminated wooden cabin. Inside was Arun, an elderly Indian man whose family had carried the burden of guarding the Blackwood Shrine for over 100 years. When the entity finally breached the cabin door, it didn't have a true face. It was a towering, shifting shadow, cycling rapidly through the stolen faces and voices of the group's dead relatives, smiling at them with the visages of their own loved ones. You cannot shoot a creature made of stolen memories. Instead, Arun lit a brass lamp and began chanting an ancient prayer. Despite not knowing the language, the hikers joined in, uniting their voices to fill the cabin with a single, unbroken sound. As the voices joined, the creature's borrowed faces blurred and bled back into the shadows. The shared chant created a barrier that the individualized whispers could no longer penetrate, breaking the entity's ability to separate the group and forcing it back into the timber. At dawn, the entity dissolved completely into the morning mist. The physical trail leading out of the woods instantly reappeared. When the hikers finally reached the safety of the highway and looked back, Arun's cabin was gone. Months later, Ryan reviewed the 4K footage he had captured that night. Despite leaving the camera running for hours while they were hunted, the digital files showed absolutely nothing but pitch-black darkness. This is Algernon Blackwood, the early 20th century author, who wrote extensively about this exact fear. In his literature, horror stems from the realization that humanity is utterly insignificant in the face of ancient, indifferent nature, a theme reflected in the entity's ability to remain invisible to digital recording. The true terror of this predator is that it cannot be captured on a screen, mapped by a satellite, or killed with a weapon. It is a permanent fixture of the woods, waiting patiently in the fog for the next hiker to walk in and ring the bell.
Guys, please subscribe my channel for more updates and more horror videos like this.